Hey everybody, welcome to our next screencast in Unit 5. Our topic today is FDR and the New Deal. What we're going to talk about today is not just the New Deal programs, but the critics of the New Deal. Our learning outcomes. This is what you should be able to do by the end of this lecture. Describe how FDR's first 100 days impacted the American people. Secondly, describe at least 3 of FDR's New Deal programs in detail. When I talk about in detail, I'm talking about specifics here. And lastly, number 3, understand how the New Deal was seen by critics. A lot of people didn't think that FDR did enough, which is kind of incredible to think of all the programs that he helped push through, and yet people still think he didn't do enough. So let's look at FDR himself. He's a 2-term governor of New York, and yes, he is related to Teddy Roosevelt from earlier. He has a can-do attitude according to the American people. He is very reform-minded. He wants to change things. He wants to make things better. He is going to set up what is going to be known as a brain trust once he gets elected. The problem, though, and the reason why he ultimately sets up this brain trust is not because he's not smart enough to do this stuff on his own, but he's got to wait for 4 whole months before he takes over the presidency. He got elected in November. This is at a time where you didn't take over the presidency until March. The 20th Amendment is going to change that, and it's still in effect today, which the new president takes over in January, so we only have to wait about 2 months for that. But now he has to wait 4 months, so he has a long time to start to develop things to do. And what he's going to start to develop with this brain trust is, with doctors and lawyers and businessmen, is the New Deal and what he can do to help the American people. Take a look at this map right here. FDR wins in an absolute landslide. All that blue, that's FDR, and a little bit of red, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Connecticut, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine were for Hoover. You can see there 11% of the vote for Hoover, 89% for FDR. By 1932, the American people are just sick and tired of Hoover and the Republican Party as a whole. The first 100 days, that is one of the biggest and important things for FDR. This is where a lot of his New Deal legislation is going to get pushed through. That's March 9th to June 16th, 1933. The very, very first reform is banking. The number one thing to do is the first day, day number 2 rather, is FDR shuts down the banks. Because of all the chaos that had ensued for really 2.5, 3 years now, almost 4 years, people rushing to the banks to take their money out. When the banks don't have it, people get really upset. So the first thing he does is shut the banks down. The Emergency Banking Relief Act forces the banks to be inspected by the Treasury, and if they're financially sound, they're allowed to reopen. Throughout this first 100 days, the role of government is going to expand pretty heavily here. He's going to start to put his hand in everything. And part of how we're going to get out or start to get out of the Depression is by something called deficit spending, where the government is going to take in less money than they're going to spend. So you may ask, well, what happens how can you just create these jobs? Where does that money come from? Well, just like we have today, a $16-17 trillion debt, this is what's going to happen with FDR. He doesn't like it, but calls it a necessary evil to try to get us out of our current situation. In this first 100 days, over 15 pieces of legislation are passed. There are some presidents that don't pass 15 pieces of legislation in their entire 4 years. This happens in less than a little over 3 months. So Roosevelt's plan, 3 R's, relief, recovery, and reform, and you're going to see what each of these things within the New Deal programs itself, how they work. So the first thing, relief. Agricultural Adjustment Act, or known as the AAA, it's going to raise crop prices by lowering production. It's going to be a really big deal. The government had proposed previously to buy surplus crops and raise prices that way, but now what we're going to do is force the crop prices to go up by lowering production by the farmers. The Civilian Conservation Corps, it's going to put men 18 to 25, mostly men 18 to 25, to work building roads, developing parks, planting trees. I think it's something like 3 billion trees or something that get planted, some incredible number, and help in soil erosion products and flood control projects. They're going to make $30 a month, 25 of which is going to be sent home to their family. Now you're thinking, wait a minute, why $25 being sent home? Well, within the CCC, their food, their clothing, and their room and board is going to be paid for. That money is going to get sent home to their families in hopes of stimulating the economy. That $25 could go a really long way for a lot of people. The Tennessee Valley Authority is going to renovate the Tennessee River Valley area, help fix 5 dams and build 20 more to help in flood control. And with these dams, it's going to help in creating hydroelectric power in this Tennessee River Valley that has never had it before. So it's really going to be a significant push forward into the new era, if you want to call it that, for the Tennessee River Valley. A lot of private electric companies are really not going to be happy with this. They're going to call it socialization, with the government owning this electric company. A little bit more relief. The NIRA. It's going to provide money to states to create jobs. A lot of what they're going to do is construct schools and community buildings. Within the NIRA is going to be what's known as the Civil Works Administration. This gets created when the NIRA is considered not to be able to create jobs fast enough. And from there, we have the NRA, and that's not the gun NRA, but the National Recovery Administration. This whole thing through the NIRA, the CWA, and the NRA is to stop the cutting of wages, falling of prices, and to create more jobs. And all these things kind of work under the same umbrella. HOLC, or the Homeowners Loan Corporation, it's going to provide loans to people facing foreclosure, and it's going to help them out. And also the FHA, which is going to guarantee loans for those people. So some recovery. The WPA. This is probably one of the biggest programs that FDR was able to push through. It's going to run from 1935 to 1943. 1935 is the start of Roosevelt's second 100 days. It's going to run up until 1943, kind of midway through our involvement in World War II. In total, spending $11 billion to give jobs to over 8 million workers. Now remember, we had 13 million workers plus out of jobs, and the WPA alone is going to employ 8 million of them. That's incredible. Building airports, 850 of them, renovating, constructing, repairing 651,000 miles of roads. And remember, it's a little over 3,000 miles from West Coast to East Coast. They did 651,000. They're also going to employ professionals to write city guides and also artists to paint murals on school and public buildings to kind of give life to certain areas. So you're getting twofold. You're beautifying an area, and you are also going to be putting these artists and writers to work. Now, banking reform. The Glass-Steagall Act, 1933, it's going to establish the FDIC. If you've ever gone to a bank and seen this, then you have your money in the right place. If you do not see this at your bank, take all of it out as fast as you can. The FDIC, this Glass-Steagall Act, was proposed during the Hoover administration but was not passed until 1933. It is going to ensure deposits in 1933 of $5,000. That means no matter what happens to the economy, your $5,000 is safe in the bank. Today, it's $250,000. It is guaranteed. If the banks fail, like Washington Mutual did in 2008, your money is still there. It's guaranteed by the FDIC, guaranteed by the government. Also, the Federal Securities Act, it's going to create the SEC. That's the Security and Exchange Commission. And what this is going to do is it is designed to regulate the stock market. Prior to this, we have a situation of the Wild Wild West, where banks are doing whatever they want, people are doing whatever they want. Now there's rules and regulations that we have to follow. Social Security reform, 1935, also Roosevelt's second 100 days, is going to provide old age insurance for retirees over the age of 65. Now Grandma and Grandpa, who had lost everything during the Depression, now can can get a recovery a little bit, recover a little bit. It's also going to have unemployment compensation, $15 to $18 a week, while people look for jobs, and now that is still extended today. And also aid to families with dependent children and disabled dependents. This is going to come also federally funded. Now, FDR has a little bit of a problem with the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is going to rule some of his New Deal programs unconstitutional. Two of those are the NIRA and the AAA. The NIRA was declared unconstitutional because the government should not be able to enforce industry codes. It is beyond their government power. Okay? And also the AAA, that agriculture is a local matter, and setting prices is a local thing, and it's a states' right issue, going back all the way to John C. Calhoun. So what FDR tries to do is try to find a loophole, work around these problems that he's having, because he gets scared that other of his programs may get challenged and might be declared unconstitutional. He's going to think of and create this court packing bill, in which he wants to appoint 6 new justices, and those 6 new justices would be pro-FDR. This is going to outrage a lot of people. Ultimately, it never happens, it never goes through, but people are really frustrated with him and the thought of this even potentially happening. Now, critics. The American Liberty League, they believe that the New Deal programs violated respect for the rights of people. Charles Coughlin wanted a guaranteed income and nationalization of banks. Well, think about this, Charles Coughlin. Guaranteed income, what did we develop in 1935? Social Security. Nationalization of banks, we also have FDIC. Francis Townsend, FDR, was not doing enough according to him. I don't know how passing 15 pieces of legislation in 100 days is not enough, but anyway, FDR does help the poor, does help the elderly, does create the pension plan. Again, we have Social Security for this. Okay, so he's kind of incorporating his critics' things into new programs. And Huey Long, probably the biggest or most viable presidential candidate or presidential opponent for FDR, proposes a program called Share Our Wealth and wants something for everybody, almost like a socialization type thing. He has a lot of followers. He is very, very popular in Louisiana. Ultimately, would have been a really good challenge to FDR for the presidency. However, he is killed by an assassin before he gets the chance to run against FDR. So let's recap. You should be able to describe how FDR's first 100 days impacted the American people. Again, all those pieces of New Deal legislation, 15 of them that gets passed in a little over 3 months. Describe at least 3 of FDR's New Deal programs. We have the Homeowners Loan Corporation, you have FDIC, the SEC, you have the WPA. I mean, there's countless numbers of them. And also, lastly, understand how the New Deal was seen by critics. Most of them people thinking they didn't do enough and wanted certain things that ultimately FDR does incorporate into his New Deal programs. So, if you have any questions, let me know. Shoot me an email, find me in class. Thank you for watching. We will see you next time. I'm out.